Teddy is the developer of the South Pole breed. He has spent a lot of time working for this breed. I listened to Teddy talk back in May down at the South Pole Field Day in Trenton, Tennessee. That's in West Tennessee. And if I'm not mistaken, there were 550 people there. Does that sound right? I mean, I think it was one of your largest groups to this day. So it's becoming more popular. The South Pole breed is becoming a lot more popular. But he taught himself everything he needed to know to start a breed of cattle that would be heat tolerant, produce a good quality cut of meat, and meet a host of other qualities and qualifiers that no other breed could do. It's a four-way cross between the Hereford, Red Angus, Senepol, and Barzona. The breed has gained in popularity. It's becoming more common in states in the South and the Midwest. At this time, I present to you Teddy Gentry.
Thank you very much. It's an honor and a real privilege to get to talk to cow people. I started with 1980. I'll kind of give you a little brief history of. I bought my grandfather, when I got my first check from RCA with the group Alabama, I said, asked my wife, I said, what are we going to do with this $60,000 here? She said, why don't you buy your grandfather's old farm? He had 60 acres, and so I said, that's a good idea. So I went, talked to my grandfather, and he said he'd be happy to sell it to me. My grandfather raised me. The little house I was raised in was his house, so he stayed on there till he passed away in '93. But the old cotton field that I was raised in there, in 1980 when I bought the farm, Greg, you couldn't have found a dung beetle or earthworm within a mile. They'd sprayed it with everything over the years, from DDT to whatever, to kill the boll weevils, and year after year of putting it in cotton just stripped out the soil. There was no value, it was about as poor soil as you could get, I guess. So anyway, we started, I bought a few Hereford cows. Me and Randy went into the cattle business the same day. We had a neighbor that had, I think, 28 or 30 Hereford heifers, and we went in, and I didn't know one end of a cow from Bud, and I wasn't raised around cows, and so Randy had picked one. He was raised around cows. I think he got me on the first go, but he'd been around cows, and his father had cows, and Randy picked one, I'd pick one, he'd pick one, I'd pick one. Well, anyway, I think I wound up with 14 or so Hereford heifers, and got them home, and we built some ponds and tried to put out a little clover seed, I guess, to go with the fescue we had started there. But the kids, my kids, they showed for a couple of years in the junior shows, and we'd go out and. But about the second year, me and Randy was at the national show, and I think these show people saw us coming, but they had this heifer that was. They said, "Oh, she's the best thing since sliced bread, and y'all need to buy her." So I think we give, I don't know, maybe $12,000 or $15,000 for half of her, and they had it set up. She won her division in the show the next day, and they said, "Now you have the option to buy the other half of her, if you want to." So we thought, well, shoot, that's a good deal. So we jumped in there and got the other half of her. Well, about 6 or 8 months later, she calved over at Randy's, and Randy called me that morning. He said, our heifer calved, and I said, good. So he said, you want to come over and see her? I said, yeah. So I drove over, and she had a little heifer calf, and the little heifer calf was under there. It was giving it all this, I said, she ain't got much milk, does she? He said, no, don't look like it. Well, I went over about a week later, and the same thing was happening. Again, the little heifer, she was trying to get some milk. The big old raw bone mama didn't have no milk. So Randy said, what do you want to do with her? I looked at her, and the best decision I made, I said, I don't know what you're going to do with her, but I said, I'm going to give you my half of her. I did. It was probably the best thing I ever done was to learn at that point that show cows and pasture cows were different things. So that started me on a search over the next 4 or 5 years in the back of a tour bus. I spread all my beef magazines out and anything that I could get that had beef on it, I'd read, and every book that I could come across. It was, but over the next 4 or 5, 6 years, I learned that the Hereford and Angus cattle that I was bringing to my farm just couldn't get it. They couldn't stand the heat and the humidity and putting them out on fescue, and I was running into a bunch of problems. So my choice was Brangus, Brayford, Santa Gertrudis, Beefmaster, something with Brahma in it. Well, the more I started reading about, every time you put Brahma into the mix, something happened to the meat. It got kind of tough and gristly, and so I said, well, I told my wife at the supper table one night, I said, I had a guy come through from New Zealand called Leith Pemberton. Leith turned me on to rotational grazing. At the time, he showed me pictures of in New Zealand where they was bringing the sheep down, and moving them every day. And I said, well, this makes sense to me. I'd like to start doing this. But I told my wife at the supper table, I said, we don't have a breed, we don't have the tools in our toolbox from a cow-calf operation standpoint to do what I'd like to do here in the South. I said, I want a tender piece of meat, something that compete with Hereford and Angus cattle from the north, so that there's not a 1 out of 3 steers that goes through our system this day and time comes from a Brahma background. So I said, we need a new breed. And so everybody kind of laughed, said, yes, that's, how long is it going to take you to do that, Gentry? I said, well, I don't know, but so I started, after studying my lesson for a few years, and every time we would go out to a place where there was an old cattleman that I could find somebody that had cows for a long time, I'd try to go out and pick their brain and hang out all day, and then between the reality of talking with commercial cattlemen and some purebred guys that I respected too, I found a breed in the Virgin Islands called the Senepol. And Senepol in one generation could slick the hair off of Red Angus, which Red Angus was the weakest link in my chain because they were the hardest to get to adapt to fescue in the South there. So when I found the Senepol, I knew I had one piece of the puzzle solved. But the Senepol were so heavy milking on the half-bloods that I needed to pick Senepols that were on the low end of the milking scale, because what happens is the Senepol were almost a dual-purpose breed. They milked so heavy that those udders would start going out on the cows when the cows were 6, 7, or 8 years old. So it took from the time I started, at one time we had over 100 head of Herefords in a herd. We had 100 head of Senepol in a herd. I imported 2 plane loads of cattle from the Virgin Islands from St. Croix in the 90s. We had over 100 head of Barzonas and over 100 head of Red Angus. But as the years went by, and looking back now, only 2 or 3% of those cows wound up going into the South Pole. Only 2 or 3 cows out of 100 from each breed wound up going into the South Pole. That's the reason why today the odds are, I look at the odds on cattle, that the more cows you have breed every year and that have you a calf, if you could do 100%, if everybody could do 100% every year for 20, and the cows live to be 20-year-old, nobody would lose money in the cattle business, would they? But unfortunately, the average beef cow now produces, 4.5 calves in her lifetime? And then, so we don't even have to ask what's wrong with this picture. What we need is a cow that will live to be 15 or 20 years old. And I was talking about somebody a while ago. The number one thing in the South Pole that the further I go, the more we look at, and the number one thing for the beef cow and the cow-calf producer is the udder. People say, well, you're not in the dairy business. No, we're not in the dairy business, but the udder, if that udder don't outlast the cow, then you're in trouble. Then the second thing is fertility. Is that I tell people, I've been standing on this stump for a long time saying fertility and longevity are our money makers at the cow-calf level. Always have been, always will be. Above any other traits that you want to talk about. But what our industry has done, we've got hung up on size for the past 40 or 50 years. Bigger is better. Purebred mentality. Then EPDs came along. EPDs, I don't know, you may not even know what EPDs are. That stands for expected protege differences. It's a computer projection of if you plug in the information from the sire and plug in the information from the dam, the computer will tell you what the calf should be. As far as it'll give you a expected birth weight, weaning weight, yearling weight, milk, anything that you want to plug in and measure, you can measure. But from a cow-calf operation, the things that make you money is having a live calf every year on every cow. We have a lot of South Pole breeders that are now are enjoying 95+% breed up on heifers, cows, all the way across the board, if they're doing it right and giving the cows an opportunity and know how to provide them with the quality nutrition. No cow can live or produce without grass and without some nutrition. In my environment, as the years roll by, it was about 1,000-pound cow that does the best in my environment. Dr. Williams helped me dig up integrated resource management, got thousands of, they compiled data on thousands of head of cows, and then separated them into weight categories of 1,000-pound, 1,100, 12, 13, 14, 1,500-pound cows. The 1,000-pound cow is the only cow in the real world out there without a lot of supplementation and everything that can wean off close to 50% of her body weight every year and do it for many years in a row. For every 100 pounds you go up in body weight, you lose 2% in fertility. In other words, between the 1,000-pound cow and the 1,500-pound cow, we lose 10% in fertility, just boom. That's the way Mother Nature does it. Saying, well, the bigger cow, it's going to take her longer to gain her, she's got to eat more to maintenance. She's got to eat more to raise the calf and to breed back. The little cow's definitely got the advantage in my environment. The only way that the bigger cows could ever compete would be off of high-quality forage or high-quality feed that you can, and most of that would be have to bring in to supplement. But the little cow, I use it as an illustration all the time of give me two, you have two 1,500-pound cows, give me three 1,000-pound cows. We're still supporting about 3,000 pounds of cow between us. But 90% of the time, I'll have three 500-pound calves. 80% of the time, you'll have two 600-pound calves. Which one at the end of the year is going to put more money in your pocket? The numbers don't change. You can have 3 head or you can have 3,000 head, and the smaller cow is always going to be a lot more efficient. For years, we've been drug around by the feedlots and the purebred industry of having a rabbit to chase. For the purebred industry to sell you something, they got to have something extraordinary. In other words, if I come in here and say, well, Alan, I got this average calf here I want you to pay a bunch of money for. Average. Whoa, hold on a minute. I got to have something to say. I got this calf here. He's the biggest, tallest, longest, widest, most heaviest weight calf we've ever had on the farm. Well, how much you want for him? $100,000. Sound like a pretty good buy to me. Well, I think that we've sold ourselves down the road. We've got bigger and bigger cows, and if 50 was good on yearling weight, then 100 must be twice as good. But somewhere down the road, the cow size comes into effect. So for the cow-calf producer, it comes real quick. But if we get cows too big, they become very, very inefficient. The quality of your groceries should ultimately decide the shape and the size of your cow herd. The further you go south, the less quality is in the grass, of course. You get down where you got Bahia grass and Bermuda grass from about Montgomery, Alabama south. That's the two choices you got, is either Bahia grass or Bermuda grass, or a combination of the two. But the cow that can make a living off of Bahia grass and Bermuda grass and without supplementation feed is going to be 800, 850, maybe 900 pound cow. In my environment, it'd be a 1,000-pound cow. You go a little further north, maybe get up in northern Missouri, and maybe you can support a 1,050-pound cow. But the quality and the nutritional level of your forage should dictate your size of your cow. Even the shape of your cow. You get down to Bahia grass and Bermuda grass, what's going to be the most important factor in that cow adapting? Probably heart girth. If she's got a big old belly to harvest a lot of the grass, she's going to have to eat 3 or 4 times the amount of grass as a cow out west that can eat a couple of cowboy hats full and get along great. On Bahia grass and Bermuda grass, she's got to eat about a half a pickup load a day to get the same nutrition out of it. So then I talk about adaptability. I talked about it a little bit earlier, but Barzona was the last piece of the puzzle we brought in. A friend of mine from Missouri, Frank Felton, told me he showed me the first Barzonas I've ever seen, and he said they're called the hardy breed, and he said they're indeed some really hardy cattle. So after studying the Barzonas for a while, we decided that would be a good mating to go onto our Herefords. And the Barzonas, we use the Barzona bulls mostly on the Hereford cows and let the Hereford cows raise the calf so it would have the disposition of the old Hereford cow and be very gentle and very docile. Because we knew that to have a gentle breed of cattle meant we would have some tenderness. You can't have tenderness without gentleness. Cattle that are wild will not eat good. There's been a couple of different university studies that prove that point. So, and what are we trying to do with the South Pole now? We're trying to stabilize the breed. In the early 90s, the first ones that we had hit the ground were nothing but hybrids. They were extreme F1 to F1, 4-way cross, big old raw bone, too big. Some good things about them. We had good udders. A lot of the good udders come from the Barzona. And of course, we tried to pick good udder cattle from each breed. But the Senepol meat we found after we started doing our data on the research, we took the F1s and we took and did the research data on them. The first place we went to was Colorado State University when we did the F1s. And they came back on the F1 Senepol Red Angus crosses. They said you could cut it with a butter knife. The meat was so tender. So we knew that we were okay on that end of it. So we did the Barzona Hereford and found out we were acceptable there. So today we want to just fit in. We don't want to be known as a carcass breed, because we want to be known as the cow-calf breed for the South. But they had a carcass contest at the University of Florida that you can look up and read about back a few months ago. And they had several different breeds from Angus and Wagyu and Devon and South Pole and Hereford and Angus. They had 20-something people that are trained by the University of Florida as their taste testers, I guess. They go in and they grade all the meat on 4 or 5 different categories in a blind test, and after 3 days they turn in all the results, and South Pole won the whole event. But that's not what we're here to talk about. We want to fit in carcass-wise, but we don't want to say we are a carcass breed, because then everybody starts chasing the carcass traits. On cow-calf, we don't need a big ribeye. I don't want a big ribeye. Ribeye is maintenance. The bigger ribeye you got, the more maintenance that cow's got, and the longer it's going to take her. She's got to eat more to even maintenance herself, much less breed back and raise a good calf. I don't want excessive marbling. We all get Wagyu, I guess, if marbling was the only thing that we were selling. If milk was the only thing we were selling, we'd all be raising dairy cows. But it's very inefficient to put weight on a calf by milk. We want these South Poles to, by the time those calves are 2 or 3 months old, they start cutting back on their milk. They start putting on some fat for wintertime. So they breed back. They're getting ready for winter. We leave our calves on, I was talking about a while ago, till I pull my bull calves off at about 8 months old, because they start trying to breed all my cows and heifers, that's the only reason I pull my bulls off at that age, and I leave my heifers on till about 45 to 60 days before we calve again, before the cow calves again, and we'll pull those heifers off. But Greg showed that you can run them all together all the time and do very well with that method too. But it's all in how your management, what works best for your management system. But the cows are the main thing that we're trying to concentrate on for the cow-calf operation. I think the South Pole will continue to be one of the breeds of choices in years to come. I tell people that steers are a byproduct of a maternal program. We want to get all we can out of the steers if we can run them through a natural program or a grass-fed program. But you don't make your money on the steers in a maternal breed. You make the money off of the females. The females are the gold mine. Right now we're selling it's the market. The South Pole heifers are bringing it weaning. They're bringing about twice what heifers are bringing to the sale barn, and are worth it, because you're going to have such a high percentage of them that are going to make cows down the road, and it's all about the percentages. If you start off with 100 head, and at 3 years and when they're 3-year-old, you only got 50 of them left that made it, you're in trouble. Right? If your cows are only living to be 6-year-old, 7-year-old, and blowing out of udder, and the teat's getting too big, you're in trouble. Fertility and longevity. I'll stay on that subject all day, because those are the things that, from a cow-calf standpoint, we can't get away from. That's what makes us money. Where do we want the South Pole to be years from now? We want to be the #1 breed as far as the cow-calf operation goes. The reason that we're being successful now is that we've culled very hard over the years to get rid of the trash. I would suggest that we continue to do that. Just because a cow's just because she's a South Pole don't mean she's a good South Pole. There's some sorry ones out there too. Learn to know the difference. Learn to know what balloon teats are and what a bad udder is and what bad testicles on a bull are. When we buy bulls, the biggest thing that irks me off about this industry is you have people go out to a bull sale, and they're going to buy the biggest, fattest, slickest bull there and carry him home. What do you know about him? What do you mean what I know about him? Well, what kind of udders is he got? What kind of udders? Has his mama got a good udders? The time to buy a bull is when he's still nursing his mama. Go back, buy him, and say, I'll be back next year and get him, or when you get him weaned. But that's if I find the size cow, if she's got perfect udder, if some siblings, if she's got some daughters that's got good udders, genetics rule the roost. It's all about genetics, guys. I don't care where it's in seed corn, but we have to have a line-bred gene pool. Well, I saw a while ago, the first South Pole were nothing but big old hybrids. It says on the sack of seed corn of hybrids that don't plant this seed again, that you keep out of this hybrid because you won't get what you put in the ground. They should have a warning on cattle the same way. Should have a warning right on the side of them, so this is a hybrid. Because if you're taking this cow home, and they better be line bred. We're now getting so that we're 7, 8, 9 generations into line breeding South Poles now. My idea of line breeding is to take the best ideal cow in my herd that's the right size, that's got a perfect udder, that had a calf every year, and stack those cows into pedigrees. Just stack them in there. Just keep stacking them in there. And if it goes back to the same grandma about 4 times, then you're getting pretty good. If she's still a good cow. Because she will breed what she is at that point. My goal is to give the young people coming on the tools to make money in the cow business. We have to make a profit. Like Greg G said, there's nothing wrong with making money. We have to, at the end of that's what with young people today, we have to show them that we can have a good quality of life on the farm, and we can make money off of it. And we've got away from those two things. We've got to the point where farming is, most kids say, well, I see my folks work from daylight to dark and lose money every year and lose the farm. What you will learn here today, what these folks are talking about, is a way that you can make money off the family farm. But to be in the cow business, you have to have 2 things. You have to have grass. I see neighbors that have 20 cows on 50 acres that's been there forever. You could shoot rats at 50 yards. There's no grass. Those people shouldn't have cows. They're the worst thing that ever happened to the cattle business is somebody that won't take care of their grass or take care of their cows, either one. They were talking about ago, it takes about 3 acres of pretty good grass to support a cow in my environment on a year-round basis, if you're not going to be hauling her some feed. So you got to have, if you've got grass, then the next thing you need is cattle that are adapted to your environment. And it doesn't matter what a cow's pedigree says or what who old grandma was or anything. If she's not adapted to your environment and your groceries and your management system, you're starting out wrong. But hair is a big issue. Hereford and Angus had too much hair for me. And to get that hair off, we use Senepol and Barzona, those two very slick hair breeds. And now in the South Pole, some of these South Pole will grow hair in the wintertime, and some of those cows can go further north even than where Greg's farm is. But if they're homozygous for the slick hair gene, which comes from the Senepol breed, some of the South Pole will be homozygous for the slick hair gene, which means they will not grow hair even in the wintertime. So we need to make sure those cattle are identified and those cattle stay in the South. But otherwise, I think that the South Pole can work in a lot of places, but we don't recommend people. We have a breeder in Minnesota, or a couple of breeders in Minnesota that get along well with them. But another thing that most people don't think of is that it's not just hair. If this animal's in good body condition, if it's got some fat cover on it, that's as much as important as keeping them. I'm sure Greg will say the same thing. If they're in good shape going into wintertime, then the cold doesn't affect them near bad. Like the young people that we can give the tools to make a living off the family farm this day and time, that's why I drove up here today, is for the young people. You old folks are probably too set in your ways and to ever make any changes on a lot of y'all. But the young folks, y'all still got a chance to separate the truth from the bullshit. And there's a lot of BS out there. believe me, especially you get around in the purebred circles. Because with the purebred, like I said earlier, unless you got something to sell, well, this is the biggest one. He's the longest one. He's the tallest one. He's the highest marble. He's got the biggest ribeye in him. If I ain't got something to sell you, then what have I got? I want the best average calf in my calf crop. I want the one that does everything pretty good and don't have any gaping holes in him. If a calf weighed 100 pounds at birth, it don't matter what in the world he's genetically he is, or how good his marbling is, or how big a ribeye is. If he weighed 100 pounds at birth, he's going to kill half your heifers. It's no good. You got to put things in perspective. With the South Poles, for years we have culled anything. Now I cut anything that's over probably 75 pounds. We started at 85 and we're down now to about 75 because it's all in relationship. If we want a 1,000-pound cow, we can't use ton bulls. We got to use 14, 15, 1,600-pound bulls to get 1,000-pound cows. The guy asked me what else, how did I get a 1,000-pound cow? Quit using ton bulls. We got to find, yes. The perfect udder. The perfect udder is an udder that you never have to touch as far as the milk out. That a cow that's 15 years old will still be milking out all 4 quarters. And we prefer those teats to be about the size of your little finger to start with and to end up with. If the teat's that big and that long, we don't have time. You don't have time to go out there and be milking out any cows, do you? Milking out a cow, so you don't have time to do that. Do what? No, I don't like hair on udders. It doesn't bother me, but from what I've heard, it's not a good maternal thing. But the udder needs to be fine haired, kind of slick, and small teats. You don't want the pendulum. You don't want it, and on all 4 corners. You want it as level as possible. You don't want that big old pendulum, bad suspension. I'm trying to think of. You don't want a bad suspension on it. So you just don't want any problem with the udders. You want the calf to be able to nurse all 4 quarters anytime it wants to. And if that cow's 15 years old, you still want to have good milk coming from all 4 corners and that not be dragging the ground. But udder is, to me, I'd say udder is the most overlooked thing in the beef business. And unless we get back to the point of where we have good uddered cows, we can't have beef cattle that are productive till they're up in their teens. My telephone number, in case you young kids would ever like to write my telephone number down and ask me any questions, 256-996-0777 is my cell number. I have it with me 24 hours a day. Don't call me after midnight, please. But if you got questions about cows, I'll be happy to talk cattle with you, especially you young folks that are trying to get into it and make a living at it.
Got any questions?
So Teddy, you've got a lot of young people here starting out, and if they were going to start today on a profitable cow herd, what would be the most economical way of doing that, in your opinion? Just starting from scratch, not a lot of income or potential money to spend on this operation.
Well, I would try to get some, first of all, you got to have some grass. So I'd try to get me a place that had good grass and water. And then, like you started out, all you need is some electric fencing and somebody to move the cows and make sure they're taken care of. But with South Pole, we have a breed-up program so that you can take just a good commercial cow and breed them up. We register half-bloods, 3/4, and on up to purebred status. But if you got access to some good commercial cattle that are adapted, they're kind of adapted to their environment and doing well in their environment. You start with those cattle and just with you can buy the semen on the best South Pole bull that anybody's got for, I don't know, if you're a member, I think the members charge each other $10 a straw for semen, and that's to get some of the top-notch genetics in your herd. That's pretty cheap to get them in if you AI a few heifers. Or if you can go to somebody like Grey Judy's and buy you a couple of heifers, purebreds to start off your program with. But the cheapest way is to breed up. Right now, I'd say to breed it, buy you some good commercial heifers that are kind of adapted to your environment, that don't have a lot of hair, and have a breed up program. Yes.
I guess to follow up on that, like I said, we're further south, and we do have Bahia and and Bermuda grass. The things that do well out there are the Corriente Longhorns. What would your thoughts be of mixing that with the South Pole bull?
Using Longhorn cows and South Pole bull?
Yeah, and Corriente.
Corriente?
Yeah.
My good buddy Charlie Daniels, he passed away this year, God bless him. Charlie's one of my dear friends in the cattle business, and he had those little Mexican cattle, I call them. But I don't know about crossing them. But the Longhorns, I know some people that have crossed with the Longhorns and get along pretty well. Maybe you can answer Dr. Williams. But I think the South Pole on any, like the Longhorns, or even on Brahma type crosses, really work well. I had some Beefmaster heifers a few years ago that I got from out west, and they weren't adapted very much at all, but to fescue, when we got them on fescue, they didn't like fescue either. But anyway, the calves did really well out of that cross. The South Pole kind of fills in a lot of the holes and gives them a little more body and capacity and adds a little more beef to them. But I think, I'm sorry?
I don't hear as well as I used to. Did you say that you're breeding, say, a South Pole bull to an English cattle like Angus? They came from Scotland, so, I mean...
Yes, sir. I think you, Angus, a lot of people got Angus cattle, and a lot of people love Angus cattle, but Angus and Herefords, like I said earlier, they weren't meant to work in the South on fescue. I mean, you lose too many animals to get a few that'll work. Does that make any sense? But I think you improve. I think you're going in the right direction anytime you use South Pole bulls. We're on Angus or English type cattle in particular, you're going to add a little more heat tolerant to them. You're probably going to pull the frame score down on them probably a bit and make them a little more right size wise. A lot of the breeds have just got their cattle way too big. I mean, if you got 13, 14, 1,500 pound cows, there's no way you can make any money at the end of the year if you're running them in a commercial environment. They just eat more than they can ever bring you back in.
You mentioned early on about a smaller ribeye and less marbling. How does South Pole do in a taste? I've never eaten a South Pole steak. How do they do in taste tests?
We won the one in Florida I was just talking about. The one in Florida you can get on and look about. It's I think the meat is very acceptable. Like I said, we're not trying to be the top carcass breed in the world, but we want to fit in with a high quality white tablecloth steak. We want to be as good as any of the English breeds are, and if we can do that, then we can beat them on fertility and longevity. Then we'll come out on okay at the end of the day.
Hey, yeah, if your cattle are too big, you look and think, okay, they're too big. What would you suggest? Selling or breeding down over time?
Well, no, if you got some, if they're good cows and they're a little on the big side, just get you some smaller bulls. Get you some frame 2 or 3 is about as big as we can get by with and still have the barrel and the capacity that we need. I'd rather them be bigger, rounder. Out of Gerald Fry's linear measurements, I think for the Southern cattlemen, I think the heart girth compared with the top line is probably the most important thing we do, especially on Bahia grass, Bermuda grass. Well, like I said when I started, got one more question?
So Teddy, I think there's a real opportunity out there, and I'm working with folks that are doing this. It's tough to get into South Poles and find females that are economical right now. They're expensive for a young person starting out. All you do is you're adding value when you start with like Corriente, Longhorns. I mean, we're working with a guy in San Antonio right now. He bought a bunch of Corriente cows. He got them cheap. Guess what they do when you put a South Pole bull on them? All you're doing is adding value. You're putting an ass on them. You're getting rid of that color. I mean, you're getting a gut. And you keep that cross, breed that daughter right back to her sire. Man, you've got something really nice. And you bring a Corriente calf to the sale barn right now, they're going to laugh at you. So if you can add value just by putting a good, moderate frame South Pole bull on them, there's a huge, huge market out there for that. So, and you get into the cattle business. Corrientes are pretty aggressive grazers. They can go on some pretty rough land and make a living on that. So Longhorns, same way.
Right.
So I think there's a huge opportunity out there, especially for you all down here that need heat resistant. Those animals can take the heat.
Well, that's the first thing is if cattle can't take the heat, then they don't have a chance to breed or perform or do anything. So that's the reason I think adaptability is if you're getting into the cattle business, make sure they're adapted. If you don't do anything else, make sure that the cattle are adapted. Even if you got to have Brahma in them, I'd rather have some cows that are adapted to my environment and my management system, and then move toward the South Pole as you can afford to.
Teddy, could you explain to us why you might want a slightly bigger cow if you were further north or had better forage?
Well, it's just that, I'm not talking about a huge jump in size, but I'm just saying that with the quality of forage that Greg's got on his farm compared with South Alabama, where they got Bahia grass or Bermuda grass, that Greg's grasses are going to support another 100, 150 pounds of cow just because of the quality of nutrition that's available to the cows.
The further north you go, look at the size of the deer.
Right.
Northern Michigan, they're 250 pounds. South Texas, they're 60 pounds.
Yep. The further you go, and as a rule of thumb, the better the quality of the forages are, and the more bigger size animal it can support. Again, I hope that you've got something. The cattle business is not an ego thing to me. Ego to me is money in the bank. It's how much money can you put in the bank at the end of the year off of your cow herd, and being honest about what we're doing. I think that we've, especially the purebred end of it, we have painted ourselves into a corner. On a lot of the purebred breeds of not having anything to sell now. I mean, size is not the answer. We're trying to, with the South Pole, our goal is to have a small calf that's alive, healthy, gets up within 10 to 15 minutes and nurses. And our calves are, on my farm this year, are running from 45 to 60 pounds. Small, like little deer. But these first calf heifers, I'd say, I'll go by. We don't check for. I used to. Me and my wife had a spotlight, and at 3 o'clock in the morning, we was out, spotting, seeing if there was a calving. I sleep all night now, and maybe ride through them the next day and tag the calves that are there. But I think in 4 years, we've lost one calf that if somebody had been there, we could probably have saved it. But again. We want to do everything pretty good. We don't be known as the breed that's the carcass breed or this breed or that breed or real buy, but just money-making cattle. That's what we want. We want cattle that will fit your environment, that are the right size and shape, not to eat you out of house and home, that will make you a profit at the end of the year and be there till they're 15. We have several South Poles that are approaching 20 years now and still hanging in there working. Yes, sir. Semen, yes, sir. Semen's available from a lot of different sources. If you're a member of the South Pole Association, most of the members sell each other semen for $10 a straw. With the South Pole, I'll just touch on a couple of things. We don't allow showing. We put it in our bylaws. You can't show these cattle in competition. We think that we've seen the evidence over the years where a lot of times, too many times, that show ring doesn't. It's impossible to walk out there and pick out the best heifer. It's impossible. There's no way you know what that heifer's going to do. All you're doing is a photo that day. This heifer fits what I think is the perfect image today, but it has nothing to do with her reproductive ability, how long she's going to be in the herd, and all that kind of stuff. So, and then the other thing that we don't allow embryo transplant. We don't register any embryo calves because I flushed cows for years in several different breeds. I don't think I ever improved the breed or improved my cow herd by flushing a cow. You say, why is that, Gentry? Well, in a maternal breed, I think that every cow should raise her own calf. That way you have 100% true records. If a Holstein raises the calf, it skews the records. What happens when you flush a cow? You take the eggs, you either put them into an inferior beef cow or you put them into a dairy cow. And neither one of them is a good reflection on what the calf would have been if its mother had raised it. And anytime if you let people start flushing, I thought about saying, okay, well, let's have it so you can flush 15-year-old cows that have never missed. That might be good if you were willing to put $1,500 to $2,000 in each calf that hit the ground. You're going to have that much in them. But it's not to me, our maternal breed, we're not doing EPDs, we're doing a maternal index. And a maternal index is going to tell us each year the profitability of that cow. And basically, it's based off fertility and longevity. If her daughters are above average, as the time goes by, her numbers will improve. Those numbers on her index should change every year, depending on what her progeny do. We want to get so that we're the #1 breed out there for cow-calf operation across the South. And when I'm dead and gone, years to come, I think that will happen. I think these cattle will continue to be popular and to be more of them because we're based off of real things. We're not trying to sell a pig and a poke or trying to sell you blue sky. This is reality. It's where the grass and the cow meets out on the pasture. And I'm here because I have a passion for the small farmer, and if y'all guys or girls can go out and make a living off of the genetics that we've got here and off of the knowledge you have from the speakers that we have here on how to take the system and the cattle and marriage them together, it can be a beautiful, wonderful, joyous life and a profitable thing. I thank y'all for letting me speak today.
All right, you got one more thing. So Teddy talked about his interest in the kids and them being successful and being profitable. We would like to have the 4 FFA students and the 1 4-H come up here. And you can explain what it's for. I'll let you do that.
I was in the 4-H. I was the president of my 4-H at Adamsburg Junior High School for 4 years, and I entered the everything you could enter, I guess, from land judging to cattle judging back then, and photography, but also FFA. I was FFA when I got in school, but I like to take the money they pay me for coming up here today and donate it to something I always do, donate it to the FFA and the 4-H. Thank y'all for the job you do. Thank y'all very much. Thank you very much. This is our future, folks. These young folks, they're smarter than us old folks, I can tell you that already. And but we're proud of the work you do, and our future is in y'all's hands. So y'all take it seriously, and we're proud of you. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Teddy.
And in all things, give thanks to the good Lord for letting us be here today. Thank you.